Welcome back to LePodcast, episode 86. As always, you're here with Hoop and Sainey. Today's deep dive is on a very interesting player, one of my favorites, Kyrie Irving. How you feeling about today?
Every true basketball fan loves Kyrie Irving, so it was definitely fun looking into his career. And obviously, there was a lot of moments where I just kind of stopped researching and watched highlights because that's what it's Kyrie Irving, right? Probably the best highlight reel you'll find in the NBA. So
Just straight hoop talk, hezzy tween. There's no reason for analytics with Kyrie, bro. It brings
No.
a tear to my eye to watch him play basketball.
greatest
Multiple
handles
tears.
of all time. I'll say that right now. Greatest handles of all time.
Unfortunately, we do have to talk without watching, but he
Yeah.
has such an interesting career that I can say, this is the most research I've had to do through all of these.
I did a lot of research, but a lot of I have a very vivid memory and key points of a player's career, especially. So I knew where to trace back to instantly for the points that I want to bring up, because obviously we only have an hour and 15 with these episodes. So I try my hardest to not obviously go over that mark, but there are a lot of interesting things about Kyrie's career, and I think there's a lot of stigma around things that there shouldn't be stigma around. I think for what it's worth, in some aspects he's definitely overhated, but it's going to be interesting to go over.
Yeah, absolutely. And he has beef with so many different fan bases or front offices
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah. I could see why people give him that narrative because of how frequent it's happened. But in his defense, there's sometimes you're just in the wrong situation at the wrong time, right? But let's talk about it. Let's jump into it. Let's just jump into it.
Well, last thing I'll say, you know that meme where it's it's an extended phone with a bunch of text on it?
Yeah.
And they'll overtime will post it every 2 weeks because they run out of content. They're like, oh, what NBA player would you defend like this? Kyrie Irving.
Yeah.
Till I die. Till
I'm
the grave.
Russ. For me, it's Russ. But we've been knowing this.
Me, it's really Julius Randle.
Is it?
I've done it before.
I know. Yeah.
Oh
messing
my.
with you.
But
But
let's
this ain't
start.
Julius Randle deep dive. So
Not yet.
what is it?
The 2011 draft is when Kyrie was selected to the Cavaliers first overall. He only played 11 games at Duke as a freshman. He was out with a toe injury. He averaged 17 and 4. He was well on his way to becoming Player of the Year, whatever that award is in college. I forget. It's ACC Player of the Year, whatever it is, National Player of the Year. We went over this draft because Kawhi was selected 15, so we're very familiar with this. I'll just run through the top 5 again. He goes a little down here after Kyrie. Minnesota took Derek Williams at 2. Utah took Enes Kanter at 3. Cleveland again took Tristan Thompson at 4. And Toronto took Jonas Valanciunas. So it's safe to say that Cleveland made the right pick in Kyrie, and Tristan obviously was a core piece to that 2016 championship team. But since he didn't have much to go off in college, he was ranked, this is Kyrie, he was ranked number 2 in the 2010 recruiting rankings, 2 schools, behind Harrison Barnes, believe it or not, who was the 7th pick of the 2012 draft. So they only had 11 games to go off of, but he was just that nice where his player comp going into the draft is a mix of Mike Conley and Chris Paul. And I don't know, if prime Kyrie has a perfect comparison, but that's not that bad.
It's all right. I don't like the Chris Paul shout. Mike Conley in the sense of what? The scoring?
I think the shiftiness. Conley could move, bro.
Yeah, for sure. I'll say this. It's the worst draft comparison we've done so far.
I also don't think there's a perfect comparison for Kyrie, because even if you were to say, Allen Iverson with the handles, he's not an AI type scorer, in my opinion.
You're right. It is hard for Kyrie Irving, especially. He's definitely unique in his own sense. I don't think we've seen anything like him in terms of how he approaches the game, but it is the worst draft comparison for the deep dives we've done so far.
And I will say this, they were in the scouting report, they were praising his jump shooting, saying that was already NBA ready. But the first 3 words from the report is he's a true point guard. And that's not what I think of when I think of Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, I don't think of him as a point guard either. I think of him, he's more of a shooting guard if you look at his career.
And I don't want to say that he doesn't have point guard ability. It could just be a LeBron effect because they're saying like he's an excellent passer, which when Kyrie decides to get other people involved, like I've seen in Brooklyn without Kevin Durant, like he can absolutely do that. But I don't know if that's how you maximize him as a player. I don't think he's a true point guard.
He's not. And if you look at his numbers before LeBron, they're almost identical in terms of his assist numbers, right? Like,
yeah. And I mean, I could go on a whole tangent.
Yeah,
about
let's jump into the after draft stuff.
Man, the first thing I want to say is because people are there's a difference between being a true point guard and a traditional point guard. Have I gotten this right to you yet? The traditional is always like, oh, this is how you're supposed to play the position, which is like John Stockton. But John Stockton was not the first person to ever play point guard for a basketball team. You had guys like Tiny Archibald. I mean, Bob Cousy was a passer too. But like Jerry West, who was one of like the elite point guards of like early days. Bro, he was straight buckets. So this whole thing of being a traditional point guard is... This whole thing of being a traditional point guard is straight nonsense, and it's only biased to raise John Stockton's... it's like, oh, yo, he's a pass first. He doesn't care about
a year later, we're still throwing strays at John Stockton.
John Stockton did not score because he couldn't. He could knock down an open look. But
if you're a true LePodcast fan, you know we've been throwing strays at John Stockton.
If John Stockton could really score like Kyrie, he would. It's not because he's making his team better. He can't get buckets like that.
To go a little bit off track for literally a quick second, and we'll go right back to Kyrie. Remember that guy on TikTok who was like, little Johnny John Stockton? And that was like a week after we posted that John Stockton pod, which I thought was hilarious. Perfect timing. But let's get back to Kyrie.
After the draft, so I have this here. The Cavs had two. I mean, I forgot how they got the fourth. It was probably something to do with earlier on.
The Clippers. Their first pick was the Clippers pick, and then the fourth pick was their actual pick, I believe. No, it wasn't, because I think it was. Yeah, it was. It was their actual pick because they had a year where they were like 16. They only had like 16 wins. The year after LeBron left, and their number one pick came from the Clippers, and I believe the fourth pick came from themselves. Quote me on that if I'm wrong, but I believe that's how it went.
So the year that he was going, like that Kyrie was going into the reason why they had the first overall, they had 19 wins. The win shares leader was Ramon Sessions. Imagine having a basketball franchise where come
this
watch
is
the
a
Cleveland
savage
Cavaliers.
episode,
Ramon
man. This
Sessions.
is a savage episode. Baron Davis was on that team too, right?
Yeah, I think he only played like 30 games or something.
It's a weird team. It's like, a weird team.
They're selling tickets. They're doing promo, and you got Ramon Sessions on the tickets.
That's a Bobcats legend, bro. That's a Bobcats legend. Yo, no more strays at Ramon Sessions, man. That is hilarious.
Bro, elite tank commander. Yeah. Chase that bag.
Yeah. Lieutenant Sessions.
That was so disrespectful. I'm sorry.
So messed up. No, we gotta. No. We're respectful people. We would love for any of these players to come on the pod. We love you all.
That's my issue, because we're gonna have players on the pod one day, and if we run into Ramon Sessions on like a media day, I was like, "Yo, what's up, Ramon?"
Yeah, I'll shake his hand like the man I am. Look him deep in the eyes and said, "Sir, yes, sir."
Commander Sessions.
Yo, get back to
lead
EP,
us to the first overall pick.
You know how they have like a pregame like hype, right? Where it's like a guy in the middle.
Yeah.
It's like Ramon Sessions. Do you ever see those like RB training videos? It's like, I don't know what I'm in. And the rest of the team sing to them, I don't know what I'm in. Yeah, that's all right. We're done.
You got Alonzo G around him.
That was a good laugh. That was a very good laugh.
All right, now that I'm all sweaty and crying of laughter, when Kyrie was drafted to the Cavs, they were horrible, and they were still bad. I'm sorry, but they were still bad his first year. I mean, he averaged like 17 and a half, 18 points, won Rookie of the Year, but he only played 51 games because of a shoulder contusion.
Yeah.
Now this is something at the time where people were like, oh, is this going to be an issue moving forward? Because Kyrie was obviously missed or he only played 11 games in college. Now he misses like 30 games of his rookie season. Now the Cavs aren't playing for anything, so it's definitely something that, it's fine to hold him out for. The next year, though, he plays 59 games, fractures his finger, which is like a fluky thing, but he has another shoulder sprain. So I'd imagine at the time, I was like 10 years old, but people are saying, this is not someone that could really go through and play 70, 80 games a year. The other thing that happened, aside from being bad on the Cavs, the Rising Stars game, the infamous clip where it was Brandon Knight, right? He dropped him on the floor. He scored 32 in that Rising Stars game. Believe it or not, Kenneth Faried was the MVP. He dropped 40 on 18 of 22 shooting. Kenneth Faried.
Yo, shout out the Manimal.
What a dog. I guarantee you half of those were like putbacks that no one wanted to contest.
Of course.
But shout out Kenneth Faried. These first 2 years that I talk about where like the injury bug kind of happened, it was clear that he was a star player.
Yeah,
he was an all-star second year. He averaged 20 and 6 those first 2 years on 56% true shooting. It was already known that he was going to be one of the best point guards in the game. I don't know why I have this. I'm throwing a lot of strays today because like another person that he didn't play a lot, but we all knew was going to be really good. Don't think of it in this way because Cade didn't play as many games, but Cade Cunningham dropped like good numbers on 50% true shooting. Like, he's very inefficient, and we already know that he's going to be very good. So imagine Kyrie, like even though with these injury problems, like he's already going to be a stud one day. In a league that is not as talented,
easier to stand out.
Yes. Move ahead to 2014 season. This is his third year. He plays 71 games. The Cavs go 33 and 49. This is obviously without LeBron and the Cavs that we know from the NBA Finals 4 straight years. But this would be the next year where the Cavs flip the roster entirely. They add LeBron. I'm not going to go through all the trades, but basically LeBron came in free agency. K-Love was a trade where a part of that trade was Anthony Bennett. And at the time, he had only gone through his rookie season, so that's still a pretty valuable asset, I would imagine.
Yeah, they had first overall pick.
Yeah, they added LeBron, K-Love, J.R. Smith, and Iman Shumpert through another trade, Sean Marion and Mike Miller. 2, Kyrie Irving, Tristan Thompson, who was also very young and someone who was going to be like a pretty good rim runner, shot blocker type center. They still held on to Anderson Varejao. I can run through the rest of their roster if I look at it, but I think they had like Dion Waiters still.
Dion Waiters got traded to OKC halfway through that season for a second-round pick.
So they started with it. Dang, for a second?
I believe so, yeah, something like that. It was something crazy. I remember because at the time I thought, wow, we fleeced him.
Yeah. Then he went stupid later in Miami, but that is crazy. Basically, they flipped the whole roster. Kyrie plays 75 games this year, so now like he's kind of escaping this injury bug. His efficiency is boosted because LeBron is on the team and he doesn't have to create for himself as much. I know you're going to kind of run through the whole dominance in the East, but since I'm going through the injury history, it's important for me to note that he fractured his kneecap in game 1 of the 2015 finals.
Yeah.
So he had a healthy season up until, it mattered the most. Unfortunately, Cavs go on to lose that series and in 6 games. So my dog loves Kyrie Irving as well, as you could tell.
Yeah.
But it was very disappointing considering, the Cavs ran through the East with that newly formed roster. I told you about the new vets they added. Like it all just meshed really well.
Yeah.
And then Love also went down as well.
First round.
And then
Kelly Olynyk.
The last thing I'll say is in 2016, he plays 53 games because he was out early with the kneecap. So he missed like a lot of the beginning of the season with that same injury. And in the 2016 playoffs is when his numbers really jumped up. His numbers, like he's always been around like a 20-point scorer, 5-6 assists, good efficiency. And even in that season where he came back from the kneecap, but it was in the playoffs where he jumped up to 25 points per game, still an insane efficiency. And in the finals against those same Warriors that were now 73-9, even better, he averaged 27 a game. To compare this to the last year's playoffs before the kneecap injury, he only averaged 19 a game. And that's something I think people overlook because you think of the Cavs just all those years ago, LeBron and Kyrie. It wasn't really like that. I mean, Kyrie was nice, and he had a bunch of great games in the regular season. But he did not become this, like, star to superstar status until the 2016 playoffs, especially in the finals. This is when I think it really happened. After going down 0-2 to the Warriors, the next 3 games, Kyrie averaged 35 and 6 assists on 56% shooting, 50% from 3, and 90% from the line. Those next 3 games, which is absurd, against Steph Curry, and hits maybe the biggest shot in NBA history in Game 7 to close out the 3-1 comeback. That is like that is peak basketball.
Yeah.
You thought you're having the next, like, all-time great point guard, which I still think he had, but that was the expectation of him at that point. That's all I have.
So a lot of what I had to say, you kind of summarized in a sense, but I'm still going to go into a little bit. Obviously, you talked about the 2015-2016 season. I'm here to kind of talk about their dominance in the East. I know you took the early years, but you kind of touched base on when his dominance really started to prevail. But I want to kind of add some insight and like a background on who we thought of Kyrie was before LeBron James kind of entered the conversation. Now, before LeBron James, the most wins they ever had was 33 wins in a season, like you stated. And of course, this team never had any real expectations. Nobody ever expected the Cavs team to do anything, really. And of course, this all changed when LeBron comes in the picture. And I'm not going to go over the expectations of LeBron or the Cavs because this episode isn't about them. I'm just going to go over the new expectations that were put on an up-and-coming star guard in Kyrie Irving, who for the first time, I believe, was met with legitimate expectations heading into an NBA season. By legitimate, I mean playing a crucial role on a contending team, right? Which I think is fair to say. Kyrie, of course, takes a step back in his role on the team because not only do you have a LeBron James, but like you said, I'm not going to go over the roster again. I'm like summarizing my notes on the spot because you have a lot of my points, so bear with me here. But they have not only LeBron James, but like you said, a legitimate supporting cast now. And despite all of this, despite a completely new roster change, and despite being put in a position where his team is now winning, he's not just putting up empty stats. Kyrie still managed to put up roughly the same numbers we saw him put up when it was just him doing a carry job with less shots and the ball in his hands a less amount of times per game. Kyrie still maintained his usual season averages while improving his efficiency, making him a more suitable player to have on a championship team. Because before LeBron came, Kyrie, you could look at Kyrie as being a little inefficient. I believe his averages were like 43% for a season, 42% for a season. Like, he wasn't a highly efficient guard. LeBron comes in the picture. Obviously, he gets better looks, and we're starting to see the scoring that Kyrie can output when he's put in a position where there's proper spacing and he can actually get a proper shot off. I don't believe the dominance of the Cavs began in the regular season of their first season together. They had 53 wins, which is great, but I feel like a lot of that season was still figuring out how that team was going to work. Hoop, I'm going to give you a little bit of a fun memory here. They lost their opening night to the Knicks. I remember that very well. And
the 2015 Knicks, that's like Andrea Bargnani,
2014, 2015.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I do remember that. And the Cavs, they were still a great team in the regular season. They weren't even the first seed in the East. It was the Atlanta Hawks with their super team 60 wins. And that's a little bit of an inside joke if you're a regular LePodcast listener. But I believe that their dominance began that season during the playoffs. It was the first time that big three in Cleveland, obviously LeBron, Kyrie, and Kevin Love, made the playoffs together in their first season. And even though we saw Kevin Love go down in the first round, the Cavs were able to have their way with any team they want. And the only team that posed any sort of legitimate threat was Chicago. And even then, they were only able to take them to 6 games. Kyrie proved in his first season in the playoffs that his lack of playoff success meant nothing to Cleveland's chances of making the finals. And he, to me, was the perfect co-star to have beside LeBron James until, obviously, as you mentioned, the injury bug we've seen Kyrie deal with earlier in the parts of his career shows up again, where he hurts himself in the second round versus Chicago, which saw him take a drop in his numbers. He still showed up a few games here and there, but his production obviously fell off. Despite all this, when you have LeBron, it doesn't matter. So nobody really talks about how Kyrie kind of disappeared in that second half of that playoff run versus Chicago. He only played 2 of the 4 games they played in Atlanta. Nobody talks about that. Because when you have LeBron James, you're going to make the finals. And if you make the finals, nobody's going to question the route you took. Nobody is. Let's be honest, right? Like, nobody's going to call you out. Kyrie's first run in the finals, though, he gave the Warriors a run for their money for the limited amount of time he played. Unfortunately, he bumps knees with Klay Thompson, like you said, and he's not there. I'm trying to summarize this as I go because a lot of this stuff, like you've already mentioned.
Yeah.
And I apologize but I hope I'm doing a good job. He doesn't see the floor again, which ultimately led to the Warriors winning the series. Following this was also, and I say this to kind of foreshadow a few more things that I talk about later in the episode. Following this was the first time we saw any sort of issues between Kyrie and the Cavs, as it was reported that Kyrie's agent and his dad were upset with the Cavs due to how they dealt with Kyrie's injuries that postseason run, which could attribute to the start of Kyrie's fallout with the Cavs, which we will get into later. But Kyrie in the following season, like you said, he experienced a down year. He was on a minutes restriction given to him due with his knee rehabilitation and missing the All-Star team for the first time since he was chosen to be one in 2013. But the Cavs still had a chokehold, the East in a chokehold. Chicago was falling off. There was no legitimate threat. You can't go back to 2016 and name me a team that could have gave the Cavs a run for their money. Kyrie in the following, or as we all know, the regular season doesn't mean anything if you don't do what you need to do in the playoffs, which is exactly what Kyrie did. Now fully healthy, Kyrie went on a tear for the Cavs. He was the leading scorer against the Pistons in the first round, and he was efficient throughout their whole run in the East. Obviously, that leads to them making the 2016 finals, which in my opinion, and I think you can agree on this was the most infamous finals we've seen in recent NBA history. Like, since me and you have been alive, if you were to mention a finals, you're talking about the 2016 finals, right?
Yep.
I know you talked a little bit about Kyrie after they went down 0-2. And I had notes on that, so I'm not going to talk about that. But I want to talk about the first two games because you did not mention how bad Kyrie played in the first two games. He was freaking horrendous. In the first game, in game 1, he had 26 on 31.8% shooting. In game 2, he had 10 points on 35.7% shooting. So in the first bit of the series, it was looking like, oh, okay, the Warriors are just going to spank these boys and they're going to get their ring and they're going to have their little 73-9 season. And Kyrie Irving just fell off the face of the earth. And I believe LeBron James had 19 in game 2 as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was a number 2 show from the Cavs for the first two games. Now, you talked about Kyrie in his next 3 games and how well he was able to play. So again, I'm not going to go over those. I will say this, the greatest finals game I've seen from a duo came in game 5 with LeBron and Kyrie. They put up, both of them had 41. That was one of the craziest games I've ever watched from a duo. Kyrie had 41 on what was it? 70.8% shooting and 71.4% from 3. Here's what we don't mention, though. Not only did he do that well offensively, but he also held Steph to 25 points on 38.1% shooting. So in the most crucial game of, you could say, Kyrie's career, or at least the most crucial series and one of the most crucial turning points, he not only turned up offensively, he held the unanimous MVP to a terrible game.
I'd have to go back and watch the full tape. Did they not have dudes like JR and Shump? Not that JR is the...
You know what? As a team, obviously, collectively, they're the ones who gained
Steph Curry. That's what I want to say.
But I'm doing a one-on-one comparison.
Yeah,
I'm doing because
sure.
Listen, if you're new to basketball, you know what? Fair enough. I need to word that differently because I don't know what the matchups were like in terms of how many times Kyrie guarded Steph on how many certain possessions. But I will say this: if you're a fan of basketball and you watch basketball in the last 10 years,
he outplayed prime Steph Curry.
He outplayed prime Steph Curry. Not only that, the conversation was always Steph versus Kyrie. Like, that was a very big rivalry that we don't talk about, honestly. Like, a lot of people like to credit it to Steph versus LeBron, but how many times have you seen, like, Battle of the Guards, like Kyrie or Steph? And they would always do those, like, highlight clips where it's like they look the exact same and it would, like, transition between each of them, right? Like, these two were, like, head-to-head. Like, there was a serious conversation at one point in the league, who's better, Kyrie or Steph? That was a serious conversation.
And it went into Boston. I remember when that clip of when Kyrie
he hit the fake Saint.
Oh, the behind the back. And he went to a face.
That's the cleanest move of all time. That's the cleanest move of all time. But, but, like, you remember that, right? Like, there was a serious, legitimate conversation. Who's better, Kyrie or Steph? Now, in Game 6, Kyrie played subpar. They still won due to another LeBron James 41 bomb. But Kyrie put up 23 on 38.9%. It wasn't, I would say, a below-average game for a superstar. But Game 7, Kyrie established himself in NBA history. He put up 26 on 43.5%, which at first glance isn't like a crazy stat line. But you also have to remember the atmosphere of that game was ridiculous. Now, I don't know if you remember Game 7 of the 2016 finals, but it ended 93-89. It was not a high-scoring game whatsoever. And there was like periods where it would be like 2-3 minutes straight without anybody scoring, right? It was a very intense, high-pressure game, and he's not at home. So in a situation in which I believe could have been one of the hardest atmospheres to play in, Kyrie obviously plays at the level that we expect Kyrie to. And not only that, he hit one of the biggest shots, if not the biggest shot in NBA history. There's an argument there. I'm not going to say it is, but, you know, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. It's fair to put it in one of, right? Like I can easily say that. And this obviously helps the Cavs secure their win and their comeback to bring them their first banner in NBA history. I want to lead this into my first banner point because we've done 25 minutes now without any banner and we need some banner.
I think Ramon Sessions caught some banner, but
yeah. But like Kyrie banner, like Kyrie Cleveland banner.
Yeah.
If Draymond doesn't get suspended in Game 5, do the Cavs still win this series?
Draymond's not guarding Kyrie. Draymond's not. I mean,
to give you some insight, the Cavs won by 15 this game in Game 5. Both LeBron and Kyrie had 41. I believe LeBron shot 58, 59%. Kyrie shot just over 70.
Draymond got hurt in.
No, he didn't get
5.
hurt. He got suspended. Suspended in Game 4.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Apologies.
A fully healthy Draymond added back to that team.
I think
you got to think, what does Draymond do for the Warriors? The screens, the spacing he gives Steph.
A legal screen. I'll say the Warriors win. I do think they win. That's a big piece you're taking out. That's a big piece you're taking out.
I do believe it's a big piece, but I honestly believe the Cavs still win that Game 5. I honestly believe the Cavs still win that Game 5.
You're saying the Game 5 or the series?
Because we saw the difference. The series in general, it doesn't really matter because Draymond was out for Game 5. He was there for Game 6 and 7. It's more about do they win in Game 5. If the Warriors don't win Game 5, they don't win the series at all.
No, but when you have someone like out of the lineup, that does take a lot of momentum out of your sail.
Sure. But do you truly believe that? So do you, okay. So let me. So it's not. You don't think they would win Game 5? They would win the series. So do you think they win Game 5 if Draymond's there?
I think if Kyrie and LeBron are going for 41 apiece, they're probably winning that game. But then Draymond's able to adjust whatever happens in that game from.
But he did. He came in Game 6. LeBron still had 41, but Kyrie had a bad Game 6.
It's different when you're on the court.
Yeah,
to be able to see that.
We saw the difference Draymond made. Kyrie had 23 on 38.9%. He made it harder for Kyrie to score, clearly, because offensively Kyrie was struggling, meaning the Warriors were better defensively that game, but LeBron still had 41. LeBron had the exact same game he had the game before. And that game proves that Kyrie can play like trash, and LeBron, as long as LeBron plays like LeBron, they'll win. See, that's the perspective I look at it from, where I do 100% believe the momentum plays a huge factor. You're right in that sense. But I also look at it in the sense of, well, if somebody wants to make the point that one of the players wouldn't have a great game and they would lose, sure, that's a fair point to make. But then look at Game 6. Kyrie had a terrible game, 23 on 38.9%, but LeBron still had 41. He had basically the exact same game he had in Game 5.
This is all hypothetical. So I'm saying, if I'm trying to say a hypothetical of what if he made the physical adjustments after seeing Game 5 to Game 6 instead of just going in there.
Sure.
Like that's another hypothetical.
Sure. I think the Cavs still win that series.
I like the Cavs more than the Warriors, but
and this is from a non-biased standpoint. I get the Warriors beat us 3-1 that same series. They came back 3-1 on Oklahoma that same year. Like I'm not saying that from a biased standpoint. I genuinely believe that there was nothing stopped because it wasn't even the Draymond suspension. Like there was so many times where like LeBron or like other Cleveland players would talk about the locker room atmosphere after Game 4 and like the mindset that the Cavs had. And I don't see anybody stopping LeBron when he's in that mindset, when he's in that like zone.
Could you say that a large part of that mindset is that Draymond Green is not playing Game 5?
That's fair. I don't know when the Draymond suspension got announced, but I think everything switched when Klay Thompson said that LeBron was hurt. I genuinely think that
why do you say it's like,
because right after the game, we didn't know Draymond was going to be suspended, did we? I don't remember it being revealed. Maybe there's a rule that automatically you just assume that he's going to get suspended. So maybe you're right. Yeah, I don't know any knowledge on that, so I'm not going to give my 2 cents.
What was the exact Klay quote?
Klay Thompson said, "I guess he just got his feelings hurt," and then LeBron reacts like this.
Yeah.
Klay said what? And then it was just a 41 piece after a 41 piece. Like, what the hell? Like, what the hell? He dropped 82 in the next 2 games.
Man,
like, imagine.
screw
I genuinely think, no. All jokes aside, I genuinely think Klay Thompson screwed up doing that. Like, I genuinely think it's a different series if he just didn't. If him and Steph was talking all that. Remember, Steph was like, the series is over. He's like, he did that. He's like, you thought you were going to win? You remember that? Like, nah. That's where the turning point was for me. I think LeBron was like, all right, screw that. I'm not like LeBron's legacy was on the line. Like, we don't think about LeBron's legacy at certain moments because we're like, oh, he already won
in the finals after forming a super team. Oh,
exactly.
My
like,
gosh.
he already won. Like, if you think back to LeBron's accomplishments now, you'll think like 2011. We don't mention 2011 when we're like, oh, but like he's still not like one of the greatest players of all time because it's like, okay, 2011 happened.
But no.
One of the greatest players of all time. You cannot deny LeBron isn't one of the greatest players.
I've seen like, people
back
do
then
it,
in
bro.
like 2015, like no, but imagine this. Like right now, if you bring me the 2011 point, I can say things that combat that point. In 2016, if he lost, and then I have 2015, 2016, 2014, and 2011 to put against him now.
Yeah,
his standing. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, we would look at LeBron James completely different if they don't. And we're turning this into a LeBron debate. So let's go back to Kyrie. But you get what I mean, right? Like, we look at LeBron differently, bro, if they don't win that series. Like, he's not even considered to be the greatest player of all time at that point. I don't think he can enter that conversation.
Yeah, he can.
2016 saved him.
And then because then they go and get Kevin Durant. That is some
yeah. Well,
stuff.
Let's talk about that right now. I have a few more things to say, but let's get into the follow.
I was gonna say one more thing. I forgot about the Klay quote. As an ode to the man we named the podcast after, my glorious king would never lose a final series after being talked to like that.
Later, that's what I'm trying to tell you. So, do you switch your answer?
Yeah.
Hell no, bro. Like, there's no way LeBron is losing. Like, not to glaze him. Like, in all seriousness, like, I'm not even trying to glaze the guy right now. Like, there's no way LeBron was losing.
Too late.
There's no way LeBron was losing.
Yeah.
All right. This ain't a Krispy Kreme. This is LePodcast. Anyway, following this season,
pause.
And that has
pause. And to be honest, I mean, Kevin Love. I kind of wanted to say this when we were talking about the regular season because Kevin Love, I don't know what he averaged. He averaged like 18 points in 2015. He was the biggest hit out of like in terms of like trying to develop chemistry. I told you how they brought in all those dudes with like the role players like JR, Shump, Marion, like Mike Miller, whoever it was. He was the one who took the biggest hit, and I don't think he got turned into a spot-up shooter right away. I think the 3-point attempts went up. You could tell me if I'm wrong. It was definitely the biggest hit of like playing LeBron ball when he was All-NBA first team 2014 MVP.
Oh, he's the biggest. When you talk about players whose careers took a hit because of LeBron, Kevin Love has to be mentioned.
It's crazy because he really could have had like if he.
I respect it though. That's what you need to win. Kevin Love would have just been a subpar star that we would have forgotten about by now.
I mean, we would have
forgot about Kevin Love by now, bro.
I don't think he was good.
He was really good, but he would have been like a. Like, do you think about Jermaine O'Neal?
No, because Jermaine O'Neal played in the 2000s.
Exactly, that's what I mean. Like, in the next generation, nobody's gonna think about him.
All I'm saying is, I feel like
he went and got a ring like a genius.
No, I feel like K-Love is always the forgotten one out of the three. When
he is, and
someone who's a first-team All-NBA performer and could have been for a 3 or 4 year stretch, if he goes and teams up with, let's say, another, like a Chris Paul, I feel like we remember him, like, to be completely blunt, I think we remember, like, Blake Griffin more than we remember Kevin Love. I'll keep it.
Of course we do. Of course we do, because Blake Griffin didn't take the sacrifice in lowering his role because he can't win as a number one option.
But I'm saying
Kevin Love realized,
maybe
Kevin Love realized he
preference.
can't be a number one option.
Maybe it's a matter of preference.
I think Kevin Love understood that he's not going to win as a number one option, and he did the smartest thing a player can do and swallowed their pride and do what your team needs to do, which leads to winning. Blake Griffin didn't have that same mindset. Clearly he didn't. We saw it in the Clippers days. We even saw it when he went to Detroit. Right?
He was cooking in Detroit, though.
Yeah, but what did they do? That's the point.
Nah, nothing. But
what did they do?
All I'm saying.
What did Kevin Love do in Minnesota? You're right. He's amazing. I'm not hating on Kevin Love. He was an amazing basketball talent. What did he do? What did he do that won?
He didn't do anything that won. But
exactly.
He was better than what he was made out to be in Cleveland.
For sure. Yeah. 100%. I agree with you on that sense.
His role was
underappreciated.
Diminished to a point where it's like he wasn't even a star player. Is what I'm talking about.
I agree at that point. Yep.
But
I agree with you in that sense. Let's continue. Let's talk about the Cavs follow, because we already like halfway through the episode. We didn't even talk about Boston or Brooklyn yet. Following this season, an historic comeback, as we all know, the Warriors go ahead and sign Kevin Durant to improve their already championship caliber roster to a whole other level, making it impossible to rival the Warriors in any sort of way. The Cavs, to no one's surprise, run through the East as always and make it to face the Warriors for the third time in 3 seasons. Kyrie put up really good numbers, and in my opinion, the best numbers he's put up in a finals run, averaging 29.4 on 47.2%, for the series. But of course, falling short to one of, if not the most talented roster we've ever seen in NBA history in 5 games. Following this loss in the tunnel, now I don't know if you can remember this, but it was seen that LeBron told Kyrie, "We'll be back," which was never the case. As that following season, Kyrie requests a trade and ends his era in Cleveland. It was reported that Kyrie requested his trade as he wanted to, quote unquote, play in a situation where he could be more of a focal point, and he no longer wanted to play with LeBron James. Even though there were so many rumors spiraling around why Kyrie left for the longest time, he didn't address it to the media, why he demanded a trade. From reports saying he was sick of all the credit going to LeBron for the 2016 finals, another report saying Cavs used him as trade bait and that LeBron actually wanted him gone and dealt for Damian Lillard, Kyrie, in an interview with ESPN's Jackie McMullen after a while, finally gave his side of the story, stating that leaving was inevitable and that he could feel it coming. He also added that they didn't want him there. This, of course, led to Kyrie being dealt to the Celtics, which Hoop is going to elaborate more on here.
Name dropping Jackie McMullen is like an essay thing to do. This is a podcast, bro.
Nah, but like I wanted to cite somebody, bro. Like, shout out to him. He's the one who got the answers out of Kyrie. So shout out Jackie.
Jackie's a dude.
Maybe he's a guy. Well, maybe he's a girl. Or maybe she's a... Hey, oh, man, my bad. Jackie. Jackie's a bisexual name. It's a bi name. Like, you could use it on a guy or a girl. So,
Jackie Robinson.
Jackie Robinson. There you go. I'm not a sexist.
Jackie Chan.
Jackie Chan. There you go. I'm good. Whatever gender that Jackie is.
Boston. Going into 2018 or the 2018 season, the Celtics made a huge splash. This is after they had already gotten Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They had Marcus Smart in their roster. They add Kyrie via trade, and it is so nasty how they did Isaiah Thomas. But Isaiah Thomas was the one, along with Jay Crowder and a first, and you said someone else. Shout out to him, Ante Zizic, maybe.
Ante Zizic.
Shout out Ante Zizic. But that was the flip. And at the time, I mean, Isaiah Thomas was coming out. I mean, 2017, that was like king of the fourth quarter, like crazy clutch numbers, a ridiculous shot creator. At the time, it was, why are the Celtics getting rid of a smaller Kyrie to get, or why are the Celtics getting a bigger Isaiah Thomas? Like, that was literally a headline I read. I don't know why they said that, because they're not that much alike. But at the time, the trade was like not great for Cleveland. It was like, okay, we get Isaiah Thomas. Like, that's still like, and looking back on it now, it feels like 2018 was literally just the LeBron show.
Isaiah didn't play till like January, and he did nothing.
That's what I was like. He just faded away from the universe. And that was after the whole sister dying thing, right? Like how they did him on the trade.
Poor guy.
Boston with Marcus Smart too. Boston's front office.
No, they do it all the time, man. They do it all the time,
cold-blooded. But they also added Gordon Hayward in free agency. I remember seeing videos of people in Utah burning his jersey. Why would he want to stay in Utah with Rudy Gobert, bro? Let the man live. He was going back to his old Butler coach in Brad Stevens. This was also at a time where he could not win without forming a super team. And
shame on you for burning Gordon Hayward's jersey. That is the most shameful thing I've ever heard in my life.
That's such a weird thing to do, right? For like an egoless superstar.
A Gordon Hayward jersey.
That's something crazy to do. But basically, at the time, the Celtics had a roster that I don't want to say was comparable to the Warriors, but it was something that was building towards trying to take down LeBron in the East, is what I'll say. Like, they were real comp. Like, if you were to stack up the rosters on paper to LeBron and IT and Kevin Love, they had, going into 2018, Kyrie, who was coming off just like some peak basketball years and someone who's supposed to be a top 3-point guard for a while. Gordon Hayward coming off an all-star season, someone who's supposed to be an elite forward. That was literally being compared to Paul George. Al Horford, who was still 31, and I believe made an all-star appearance around that time. Jason Tatum was 19, Jaylen Brown was 20. but they were very high picks and had a lot of promise. They still had guys like Marcus Smart, Marcus Morris for his
Terry
shot
Rozier.
chucking. Scary Terry turned out that year. I mean, in the beginning, it wasn't a big name on paper, but he was someone who came up big in the playoffs. I remember I was a big Terry fan, bro.
Yep.
And their starting center was Aaron Baines, and I think Horford played the 4. But that first season together, game 1 against the Cavaliers, Gordon Hayward goes up for a backdoor alley-oop, which is a play they did a million times in Utah. And was it Jay Crowder that grazed him? I know LeBron was in the area, and
I think it was LeBron. I think it was LeBron. But it
I'm
wasn't
pretty
like
sure
his
it was
fault.
Jay Crowder. No,
Whoever it
wasn't
was.
his fault.
Whoever it was,
Basically,
it wasn't anybody's fault.
they gave him marginal contact. It wasn't dirty at all, and I don't even want to say what injury he had. He just busted his whole leg. It was sideways. He got picked up in the stretcher and got like that enclosed thing or whatever. Like, it was so nasty. And I do remember Dwayne Wade was a Cavalier at that point too. That was the year when the Cavs brought in all those vets. And it was
I just remember every player doing this like after the injury.
No,
like,
that's literally why I remember that, because I remember seeing that video. Everyone's like,
Dwayne Wade,
face
he's
down,
like,
Fran. Yeah,
man, it's not funny. Like, it was terrible.
No,
that's what I remember.
Yeah. So at this point, I mean, the Celtics get back in the huddle and they're like, all right, the guy we just signed for however much money is not going to play for us now. And Kyrie that season played
30
really
mil per season.
well. Kyrie played really well. 24 points a game, 5 assists. This is 49, 41, 89 shooting splits. They were a second seed in the East without Gordon Hayward. And in the playoffs, the young Celtics took LeBron to 7 because Kyrie Irving got injured. He had left knee surgery after 60 regular season games and missed the playoffs. That's when Terry Rozier kind of stepped in and had his scoring load expanded, and Jason Tatum had that dunk on LeBron in Game 7, and then LeBron went down the other side of the court and like carried like 3 Celtics on his back and laid it in.
And he does this.
Yeah. That's where for all those little the 12-year-old TikTok editors, I'll use that one clip. That's how I remember it from. But that year it was kind of like, the Celtics are really promising. We'll get Gordon Hayward back, which is crazy to expect. For him to be an all-star again. And then Kyrie Irving will be back. We'll run this back. The Celtics are going to be really good in 2019. Now, Kyrie in the regular season played 67 games in 2019. A couple minor injuries held him out, nothing like substantial. But Hayward was a shell of himself. He came off the bench a lot. Kyrie was a clear first option with a bunch of like 10 to 15 point per game scores. Tatum was the second option. I think he had like 17, but then it was like Jaylen Brown, Marcus Morris, Marcus Smart. They're all like 12, 14, Horford, 14 points per game, something like that. So not guys with a lot of scoring gravity. So it was really just the Kyrie show with a bunch of other guys that can contribute, when they're on. They were the 4th seed in the East, and they were beaten 5 by the Bucks in round 2. They got stomped by a 24-year-old Giannis. Kyrie shot 35% from the field. And I feel awful to do this because he's so young. But, for my Tatum narrative,
God.
He only shot 36% from the field. So, it's not all Kyrie.
He's only 19.
But yeah, Kyrie only averaged 20 points per game that series. It was abysmal. And before the season, after the season, he had that, he said to the Celtics, like through the microphone on the stage, he's like, "Hey man, I'm gonna resign after this season.
You're taking all of my points, by the way."
You told me to talk about Boston.
I know, but I was doing the follow. Anyway, you continue.
But the last thing is that his contract ended, and then he went to play with Kevin, and then the Celtics fans got mad.
Good old Kevin.
Kevin.
Throughout Kyrie's seasons in Boston, it looked like he was going to re-sign because he, like you said, literally told Boston he was going to re-sign. And then the 2016 offseason came around, and this obviously wasn't the case, as he was in a Nets jersey the following season. So what happened?
You said 2016. You said
2019, sorry.
19 offseason.
2019, apologies.
Close.
Irving stated that the main driving point for him leaving the Celtics was due to him wanting to play closer to home, as he is from New Jersey, and that the death of his grandfather early in the 2018-2019 season influenced this decision. Kyrie stated that he talked to Danny Ainge throughout that same season and had discussions with him stating he wanted to re-sign. But as the season went on, he started to realize more and more the relationships he had with his family and home meant more to him than the relationships he had over in Boston, which led to him shifting his mindset and ultimately turning his back on the Celtics. Although Kyrie maintains a great relationship with the Celtics players, obviously the fan base isn't a big fan of him. And looking at the reasoning of why Kyrie left, you can see both sides of it. On one side, the fan base has every right to be angry, as Kyrie publicly stated he would stay, and they gave up their fan favorite in Isaiah Thomas for the man, just for him to turn his back on them when the time came. On the other side, though, Kyrie's reasoning is more than fair, as he wanted to be close to his family and home. You know, a death of his grandfather was untimely. It wasn't expected, of course, right? Like, nobody's expecting that. That's not, I don't think that was in Kyrie's thought process when he decided he was going to re-sign with Boston. And I think that the death of his grandfather definitely sparked the idea of like, okay, I want to be close to the home. I want to spend more time with family. There's nothing wrong with that at all, right? I don't have any, if I was a Celtics fan, I understand the ill feeling towards Kyrie in terms of like the promises, but at the same time, that's life. And, you know, things are bigger than basketball, right? And I think people have to understand that.
Can I say this? I don't know how Boston fans, if it's more about like the empty promise, because it's business. Sorry, the writer's going crazy. What I would be mad about Kyrie for is stinking it up in the playoffs. If there's anything,
he only had one run though, dude. Come on, one season with a rookie Jay Tatum,
it's
or sophomore
Irving.
Jason Tatum, and no Gordon Hayward. And
I'm saying it's not something that I.
It wasn't just Kyrie. That, like you said, it was the other pieces that played bad too. The whole team trashed the bed.
It's not something that I would be upset about. I'm talking about from a fan's perspective, because I don't want to make. I personally, like, I'm a Knicks fan. I don't like Boston fans, but I don't want to make it out to be like, oh, it doesn't matter if you're going to see your grandpa or whatever. Like, you're an idiot. So I'm just saying maybe they were upset with him for how poorly he performed. Maybe that's
sure. That's a fair indication. But I think the biggest thing was that he literally said he was going to resign and he didn't. That's fair to say. That's the biggest reason.
That's
like,
fair
he was straight up, and I understand that reasoning. I'm not hating on Celtics fans for hating on him. I'm just saying, you know, I could see Kyrie's side to it.
That's why
and
it
I
happened.
think where Kyrie messed up, right? Because I'm trying to look at this from an unbiased standpoint. So I understand why Kyrie didn't sign with the Celtics, but I think where he messed up is how he dealt with the decision. I think guaranteeing to the media when anything can happen is a ridiculous idea. I think players need to stop guaranteeing they'll re-sign when they haven't signed anything yet. Obviously, it's like talk is talk. Talk is cheap until you put it.
Man. Empty promises, man.
Not like if he didn't guarantee to the media he would re-sign with Boston, Boston fans would have a different outlook as Kyrie as a person. But let's take a little bit more of an in-depth look at the team Kyrie left Boston for, if you want to chime in, Hoop.
We're talking about Brooklyn, correct?
Yes, we are.
I mean, at the time, this was a Kevin Durant-led team, supposedly, but this was after the Achilles tear. So it was really like Jared Allen, Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, a cool young team that no longer had D'Lo. But he only played 20 games, Kyrie did. He had right shoulder surgery. I don't even think the Nets were in the bubble. So this was all pre-bubble, and then he just sat out. He had 27 and 6 as his averages on great efficiency. But obviously this is well before James Harden, so the Nets still had a respectable deep roster. It was just something that was like, oh, when KD comes back, now we're going to start cooking. That season was kind of throwaway, and for good reason it was a throwaway. Going into 2021, Kyrie only plays 54 games. Once again, we're back on this injury thing. He had various injuries, but a sprained ankle versus the Bucks in the playoffs was the killer. Because KD obviously had a good ramp up to the playoffs that season. He had a ridiculous series against the Bucks, but they also added James Harden, and he was playing like an MVP candidate that season, which we literally just talked about in another deep dive. That series against the Bucks, Kyrie goes down in game 2, or Harden was 1, Kyrie was 2. Both of them went down.
And then Harden comes back.
Harden came back because Kyrie went down after Harden. So basically, it was just a domino effect. Kyrie later came out and said it costed the Nets a title. And I mean, we've said it before. Like, they would have had to play the Hawks and the Suns. So
Ooh.
Ooh. We'll see you in the A. We'll see you in the A.
Shiver me timbers. No, we're being so rude for no reason. Who are we to say anything? I barely can average double digits at a YMCA, so take my
I'll
roast
see
with a
you
grain
in
of
the
salt.
A. But I think it is safe to say, like, I mean, they would have definitely been more of a finals contender than they were.
Yes.
So
Easily.
that season, even after that, it was like, all right, the Nets are going to be cool. It's just, it's a little slow at first.
The Nets are going to be cool.
Man, 2022, keep in mind, COVID-19 is a thing, and now New York has a vaccine mandate where you can't play home games without it. Kyrie only played 29 games in the season. I have a little timeline to like how this went down. In September of 2021, Kyrie turned down a 4-year, $100 million deal from the Nets. It was more than $100 million.
In hindsight, it's a genius move.
To be unvaccinated. Instead, he opts into his player option, which is probably 30 something, and then he was gonna hit free agency the next season. New York athletes just needed to be vaccinated in order to play home games in the arena because that's what fans had to do. So it was the same thing for players. Whether or not you agree with the decision, I mean, at the time, I didn't like it because I didn't think it made any sense, but it's cool, whatever it is. Kyrie missed the first 35 games altogether, and I remember this time, I thought it was like the Nets were really gonna fall apart earlier than they did. Like I thought Kyrie would never play another basketball game in New York ever again. That was a genuine thought I had. And then he came back to only playing away games until the rule was lifted in late March. So now you have an aging Kevin Durant, Kyrie in the middle of his prime, who we're getting robbed of basketball games from, and James Harden, who is growing upset with the team after only being there for like a calendar year.
Fair enough.
I understand it, but I'm saying it's just I feel like we were robbed of so much good basketball from the big three.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I have some in-depth numbers about that as well. But...
Yeah, I mean, this is more about like the COVID stuff and like the setbacks he had in Brooklyn. James Harden was, as if he could get any worse. James Harden is traded to Philly for Benjamin Simmons. He doesn't play for the Nets in 2022. So now the Nets go into the playoffs. I forget even what seed they were. They got swept by the Celtics in round one. There were a couple close games. I remember Tatum had a spin move that like capped off, like a spin move into a layup. That was like a one possession game at the end. This was the year where Steve Nash was running the infamous 3 players under 6'3" lineups, where he had like Patty Mills, Seth Curry, and like Goran Dragic out there. But this was before Claxton really came into his own. This was before the Nets had really anyone to fill any sort of like good role player gap to the Kyrie KD tandem, because Ben's not playing. He's just sitting in street clothes on the bench. People are really upset by this. Kyrie played all right, which I think people don't give enough credit for. I mean, he was poor when it came down the stretch, but everyone was poor. KD just fell off the face of the planet because he got trapped every time by the Celtics. It was a massacre. It was a murder. And then I guess you could go through how it went down.
We talk about the Brooklyn Big Three on 2 different occasions before this, and we did a deep dive on Kevin Durant and Harden. Now, we're 53 minutes into this episode, so I will shamelessly do this. I'm not going to go into depth with the Big Three. Go listen to the other 2 episodes. There's your little plug. I'm not doing this again, and if you've listened to the other deep dives, I'm sure you can appreciate this, because you don't want to hear about the Big Three again, because we've already went through them twice. And if you're a new viewer, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for coming to listen to us. We love you. Go listen to the other episodes. They're just as good as this one.
Minus the Ramon Sessions slander.
Yes, of course. In that short time the Big Three was together, though, they looked unstoppable, and they only played 16 games together. But they had a record of 13-3 when they were on the court at the same time. Obviously, like you stated, like the and we've said this so many times that it's kind of like the Big Three's ultimate downfall came from injuries and injuries alone. We can agree on that, right? Like without the injuries, they have a ring, like we've stated, and we've discussed the Big Three so much, it's gone to the point where we're just going to be repeating the same things over and over again. So I'm throwing a curveball at you, and I'm throwing a curveball as a beautiful way to end this episode, because I, of all people, would love to get your insight on it, because I know how passionate you are about that Harden MVP season. Nobody talks about how good Brooklyn Harden was except for you. Nobody's ever mentioned or ever had a discussion with me in my life, by the way,
nice,
about
man.
how good Brooklyn Harden was except for you, which is why I love to give you this opportunity to even talk about it more. Who was more valuable to the Big Three, Harden or Kyrie?
James Harden.
I'd love for you to elaborate.
The better question. I don't know if I want to say this.
Say it, bro. It's a pod. Why you holding back?
The better question is between Harden and Kevin Durant. that is.
Okay, that's I don't agree with that, but I respect it. I respect it. You stay 10 toes, so I respect it.
The reason why I hold back is because if the playoffs came around, and I hold on to this with all of my might, that in round one, when the big three were healthy against the Celtics, Harden played extremely well. I'm not going to pull up the numbers. I have before.
We did it before. We've talked about the numbers before.
It was something ridiculous,
Go
bro.
listen to the Harden deep dive. Go listen to the Durant deep dive.
It was like first option numbers. I don't know what the shot profile was between him and KD, but he was playing out of his mind.
Yeah.
He was still an explosive guard who can get to the free throw line whenever he wanted, but now he had more of a shot, like a higher IQ when it came to running an offense. Double-digit assists almost every night, to the point where he had a stretch where it was like 16 assists, 17 assists. And he was playing like Russell Westbrook numbers. And I hate to say this, but it was just more it just wasn't as reckless.
When I heard you say, because the way you said that sentence meant there was a but.
Yeah.
And when I heard you say the Westbrook, and there was like a clear like trail in your tone to lead on to something, it's okay. All right.
And I don't know how he would have done deeper in the playoffs, but I just know that he was on a roll where it was like you didn't need another 2 stars.
You didn't need
next
Kyrie.
To him.
You didn't need Kyrie.
You didn't need Kyrie.
That's the reality of it, and I agree with you.
And I think the motor of that offense for the majority of the 2021 season was James Harden, because KD didn't play a lot, and the Nets still got a really good seed. So I think the better question is between Harden and Durant. If you were to ask me who had the better 2021 season, it's probably Durant because of that Milwaukee series alone.
Of course, yeah.
But bro, if you went
like that
healthy,
Milwaukee series proved to me that Kevin Durant held back because he had a guy like Harden.
Yeah, and I mean also like Harden played a lot without Durant, and that's why his numbers were so ridiculous. He made everyone look incredible.
He got Joe Harris a $20 million contract.
That's like some John Wall stuff, bro.
I'm joking. I don't know when Harris signed that extension. I think it was before the Harden. I'm joking.
Joe sold in those playoffs, by the way.
He did. Which we talked about in the Durant and the Harden deep dive.
Yeah,
go listen.
If I had to rank the big three, it's definitely Kyrie last. And I know we're trying to be objective this episode. It's like I want to. There's a sizable gap.
It's a deep dive, and we have to be non-biased. We're not here to glaze a player, respectfully. Like, we're here to tell the truth, and we're here to give the ups and the lows. I agree with you 100%. Kyrie was the least important. Was by far the least important player in Brooklyn out of Harden, Kyrie, and Durant. By far. What did he do for Brooklyn?
He scored the ball. That's about it.
Right? Like, and that sounds very disrespectful. Kyrie was amazing in Brooklyn. He played some peak basketball in Brooklyn. That is not disrespectful whatsoever. But there was never a moment where Kyrie was the main reason and the main drive behind you being like they can win a ring, right?
He was just asked to score the basketball. Like,
he was just asked to score the basketball.
Ultimate facilitator. Kevin Durant was the go-to and late. I mean, I know they kind of passed around late game possessions, but if you have a big moment, you're going to Kevin Durant.
And listen, this goes without saying. Obviously, like, if you're a new fan of basketball, which I hope you are, because I hope that we're the gateway to you becoming a fan and you obviously getting information on these players. You don't know, like, we kind of like sugarcoat it in a sense, because I don't like getting political, but you don't know how big the COVID issues were for Kyrie. Like, that was a big hindrance to him and his career in Brooklyn. Like, he barely played in Brooklyn, dude.
And the last thing I'll say, I know we're not trying to get into Dallas, but I completely forgot until I did my research about the Amazon link. And he got an 8-game suspension.
Yeah.
And I want to go into a little bit of the Brooklyn fallout, because I think that is the thing I was supposed to do. We're not going to get into Dallas. But earlier this season, Kyrie tweeted an Amazon link to an anti-Semitic film. He didn't watch the movie, he said. He tweeted it because of the title. It was something between Hebrews and black people and something going on. I'm not going to get all political. I have no idea what it was about. I didn't watch the movie. Don't watch it, in fact, because it's anti-Semitic. But it resulted in an 8-game suspension, which just led to the media dogging on Kyrie, saying you're always a problem. You couldn't get vaccinated. You can't do this, and that's all up for debate whether it's morally correct or not. But it ended up that, because I think that had to play some sort of factor. That, along with the front office not giving Kyrie that extension he wanted and them kind of tolerating him as opposed to like appreciating him, is what happened, is what led to the trade request, which sent him off to Dallas. And here we are now.
I don't think him missing the playoffs with Dallas is his fault at all, by the way. Dallas was
no,
a mess.
Dallas is not built for the playoffs. They did a nice offseason, though. They had a nice offseason.
They did, yeah. No, they were going to be great, but right now they weren't built for it.
No, that year that was a throwaway year.
But this was a great. I think I don't want to kind of like circle around the same points, but I think this is, dude. Kyrie's funny to look at.
He is funny.
He has a funny career, and I'll say this. I want to give a little bit of biased takes in these deep dives at the end, just so you guys can get a grasp of how I am as a fan. I love Kyrie. I love Kyrie Irving, man. I think he gets hated too much. I don't think he meant to be anti-Semitic, by the way, and whatever he posted. I don't know anything about it, so do not go at me for that. He doesn't seem like a hateful person, though. He don't seem like a bad guy. You know what I mean? Shout out Kyrie, man. And yeah, that's all I have to say. This was a great freaking episode, dude. These deep dives are like my favorite part of my week.
I love these too. The last thing I'll say is, because I know I love praising people that get hate.
Yeah.
It's fun to do. Like, my favorite basketball player genuinely is Julius Randle. Genuinely my favorite basketball player is Julius Randle, because it is so much fun as a Knicks fan, because the whole perception of, there's not even Knicks fans have a good perception of him. So whenever he drops like 57 against the Wolves, I could go on Instagram and just boast, because he's really good in the regular season. In the playoffs, you got to tone down a little bit. But I have excuses. He got ankle surgery after this playoffs. He played on a bad ankle.
You heard him. You got the excuses.
I'll defend him till the death.
You heard him.
But this is what I do with Harden, and a lot of these players that
are so dope.
They're held to high regard for a reason. Ben Simmons is held to high regard for a reason. People just forget about it. So we gotta be the good media.
Oh, Ben Simmons deep dive soon. I freaking love you, Hoop. What an idea. Yeah.
Don't say when, because we gotta keep them on the hook.
Yeah, for sure.
Ben Simmons deep dive not coming soon. Forget about
it. Anyway, this has been a great episode. We appreciate you guys so much if you listen up to this point. I keep forgetting to say this at the beginning of episodes. Remind me next time, Hoop. But to all the people who are commenting on our Spotify and responding, and we're going to have a poll for this time as well, and the YouTube comments and Apple Music, everybody who's showing love, genuinely, we read everything. And not only just the love, but the constructive criticism as well, we appreciate so much. And thank you guys so much for interacting with these episodes. It makes us want to do them that much more. So please make sure on Spotify, there's a section, if you scroll down while you're on the podcast, within the episode, you can respond what you think about the episode. Give us constructive criticism. We love it. That's how we found out that, we need to do more banter in the deep dives. And that's how we kind of get an idea of what you guys want to hear. We also get names. I know Westbrook's a name that popped up. That's a deep dive that's coming. We can guarantee that. We just don't know when. And also the YouTube comments, man. It's dope to read. It's awesome to see. It's what we want to see. And it definitely helps us, push and continue to work on this brand and this podcast. So we appreciate the love that you guys have been sending. Our views have been up tremendously, which is awesome to see.
Are we top 40 now?
Yeah, we were top 40 with last time I checked in the Spotify.
That's
when you click on Spotify basketball podcast, which is amazing to see. Honestly, it's mind blowing. We're put in a position where we could work towards a dream that you can only think about, right? And when you get to live it, and it's because of people like you who are listening that take the time out of your day to listen to our stupid basketball takes. No, I think in all seriousness, I think, Hoop, it's fair for me and you to say that we have a respectful opinion. But it's awesome. I wanted to give a little bit of love at the end. We appreciate you guys so much. Again, we don't take it for granted. We want to continue to push these out. We hope you enjoy this, and we thank you for listening to this episode. We'll see you next week for the next deep dive. Peace.